Afternoon, late afternoon. It's quite warm still, and I've been raking up the leaves in the front garden. Gardens here in the Philippines are like in New Zealand in a way. Everything grows so quickly, and gives me an opportunity to remove some of the items there. There's so much in the way of to keep you busy in your garden. Some of you also commented about this wall here. This wall's actually owned by the next door neighbour. They put it up maybe about 9 months ago. And on their side, they have plastered the wall. On this side, they've left that probably out of sight, out of mind, but it's for us to do. Some are suggesting that it's crumbling. Well, I can assure you it's certainly not crumbling here. It's just becoming, it needs a good power wash. And then I'm going to get my friend Edwin to plaster along here. He said it'll take him 3 days to do that. So that's about $1,500, pesos, to get that rendered all the way along and put a little bit of a cap on the top there. I presume they want to leave their bits of steel sticking up, which are quite handy because when we had the heavy rain and the storms, I had to hold up this tree because, as you can see, it's a, now what do they call this? Oh, it escapes me. I always forget it. Anyway, it has a beautiful pink flower. Actually, you can actually see the flower around here. Frangipani, that's the one I'm trying to just see if I can climb up onto the next area, and you'll see the pretty flowers that it has at different times of the year. But as you can also envisage that it's leaning somewhat. It's always been leaning, but it has a good root ball on it. Originally it was a branch of a tree that was in the way of the boundary wall there. So I chopped it down, literally stuck it in the ground, and thought, well, it's probably going to die and I'm going to have to cut it back. But it's flourished somewhat amazingly. It's a full-grown tree again, and it's nice to have a bit of a tree. And I've got another branch separate, more vertical, but they're doing really well. And if you notice next door, there's this great big, I don't know what they call it. I managed to cut 2 bits off of that, 3 bits actually. This is what it's like when it's young. That's just, not sure whether it's in a pot. No, I put it in the ground. It's just a couple of sticks in the ground, and it's already starting to grow there. And as you can see, look, it's almost as big as its mum and dad next door. So they grow really well and quite prolific. So this is an area of the garden that we want to try and sort out. We want to try and create a footpath from here, maybe stepping stones through gravel. Jane suggested that we put gravel there, which is probably a good idea. Trying to establish a lawn and forever keeping it cut here and things like that is probably not so practical. It's much easier to remove weeds that pop up now and again out of gravel than it is to do it in the lawn. And these are actually palm trees, but they're what they call like a hybrid. They're a miniature version, so they will start producing coconuts in a couple of years. That one there gets a lot more rain than this one for some reason, but they're doing really well. They just started literally off as a coconut in a coconut, and they started to sprout out of that. Some of these here have been left a little bit sadly for a while, but they've, like every time you think they're dying, but they're really flourishing. Everything is flourishing in the garden, no matter how much care you show for them or not. They just seem to just be in abundance. This area here, these are only old temporary shade cloth, but they've been temporary now for 2 years, 3 years now, and it's about time we now put proper rolled out across the top and secured. But there's one area that we have to plaster right up on the top there, so we'll have to wait till I can get some scaffolding up, get Ron or one of the other guys to continue with their expertise just to finish that last bit off, and then we can paint the outside of the house completely. I've started, as you can see, to top coat it. It just needs to be top coated. That's why we need the what do they call it, the scaffolding. But this here is a frame that again Ron constructed to my design. It's just a shade house. It's going to have more steel around the outside to stop people from coming in, and also animals. And it'll have a door on both ends. It's a bit like a greenhouse, but without it being green. Well, we could always paint it green, I suppose. And along the side here, which is going to be just backfilled and gravelled like a footpath, so we can come round without actually going into it. But sometimes gardens get a little bit neglected for a while, but sooner or later we'll resurrect it, and we're doing it, well, I'm doing it anyway, bit by bit, and trying to make my thumb more green. And here, of course, we have the trench dug out for the boundary wall, and as you can see very closely, literally over our back fence, this is where one of our neighbours is using the land of another neighbour to plonk his fighting cocks, some 70 in all, I'm told. That's why you get to hear the cock-a-doodle-doos. Of course, if you don't live right next door to 70 cock-a-doodle-doos, then it would be obviously a bit quieter. But slowly but surely we're getting all these things. The back is always the last area of the house to get totally finished. I want to put a terrace out the back here so that it's all backfilled and usable area. I want to put a clothesline, a couple of clothesline, like a Hills fold-away clothesline. And slowly but surely things come. They don't cost a lot of money. They're more about labour and will. Putting in the will and the labour is quite easy, but it's very relaxing to walk around here and just pull out weeds here and now and again, and just make sure that the dead leaves are removed. But this is an area that will be attacked in the near future. Along the back of the wall here, there are outlets coming up out of the ground at the back of each of these pillars, which will be supplying power to the outside area, which will have a lamp on each of those. Now that the fences, or should I say the gate, is now how I always wanted to see it when I discovered a nicer, lighter way of creating the gates, which is now keeping the dogs and people out of the property. And my trusty bike and the property next door getting somewhat overgrown, but the goats help to keep it down. This here is a self-propagated guava tree, and as you can see already, there's more and more guavas appearing on the tree. I just cut down the lower branches yesterday. It says to give it a bit more shape and encourage it to propagate. They're a terrible pest here, I think. When you have the mountain soil dumped to backfill, they often have caribou grass, and it is just almost impossible to get rid of, but I ended up having to get some Roundup, which I was reluctant to do. But it's worked. It's killed them all, which is good. Don't want caribou grass on the property. And these are a couple of branches I saved. We just stick them in the ground like a willow tree, and they will start producing that little leaf that is often used in soups and stuff. It's very good for the body. And I have to remove a couple of these plants. Here's some bananas, obviously well and truly ripe. I don't think there'll be much use now, but we'll take that tree out in the next day, maybe tomorrow. I bought a saw this morning at the local market where I filmed, and if you're watching this on the Grumpy Expat, if you go over to British Expat in the Philippines, you'll get to see me walking around the market here this Sunday. I suppose we better call this an end. We better call this a wrap, because unfortunately it's just starting to rain, which is good in some ways and annoying in others. So if you like this video, don't forget to give us a thumbs up. Don't forget to like and share. And of course, come over and visit me on a British Expat in the Philippines. I'm back and alive, and we're going to have more and more on both channels. So it's a bit like a double up. You'll have a couple on this channel and a couple on the others, and I promise you they'll be different, so that nothing is boring. And we'll catch you then. Bye now.